The unknown ship emerges. The vast emptiness of the Kepler sector stretched endlessly in all directions, dotted with distant stars that looked like scattered diamonds against black velvet. This region of space had been claimed by the Crimson Alliance for over 2 centuries, and their patrol fleets moved through it with the confidence of absolute rulers. Today, Admiral Vextar commanded one such patrol from the bridge of his flagship. The Blood Talon, Vextar, was an imposing figure even among his reptilian species. Standing nearly 4 meters tall, his crimson scales caught the light from the bridge displays, and his golden eyes held the cold calculation of a predator who had never known defeat. The Crimson Alliance had conquered 17 star systems, enslaved dozens of species, and built their empire on the simple principle that might made right. For 200 years, no one had dared challenge their dominance in this sector. The bridge of the Blood Talon hummed with quiet efficiency. Officers from various conquered species worked at their stations, all united by their fear of the Alliance and their desire to stay alive. The ship itself was a marvel of military engineering, stretching 3 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapons that could crack moons and shields that had never been breached. Commander Zolfek, Vextar's most trusted officer, approached. The Admiral's command throne, his darker scales and numerous battle scars spoke of decades of service in the Alliance fleet. "Admiral," he said, his voice carrying the respect born of both loyalty and terror, "our long-range sensors are detecting an anomaly at the edge of the system." Vextar did not immediately respond. He continued studying the tactical display that showed the positions of his 12-ship patrol fleet. Each vessel was a dreadnought-class warship, capable of reducing entire cities to ash. Together, they represented enough firepower to conquer most civilizations single-handedly. "What kind of anomaly?" the Admiral finally asked, his voice a low rumble. "Energy signatures consistent with a ship, sir, but the configuration is unknown. It appeared suddenly, as if it materialized from nothing." Zelfek's claws clicked nervously against his datapad. "The vessel does not match any ship design in our databases." This caught Vextar's attention. In 2 centuries of conquest, the Alliance had encountered hundreds of different ship designs. Their databases contained detailed information on every known starfaring species within 1,000 light-years. An unknown design suggested either a completely new species or technology they had never seen before. "Size and armament," Vextar demanded. "Difficult to determine, sir. The ship appears to be roughly 800 meters in length, but our sensors are having trouble getting clear readings. It is as if the vessel is somehow interfering with our scanning arrays." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. 800 meters was small by Alliance standards, barely larger than a heavy cruiser. If this was indeed a new species making first contact, they had chosen a remarkably modest vessel for the task. Most civilizations tried to impress the Alliance with massive ships and overwhelming displays of force, usually right before they were crushed. "Have they attempted communication?" Vextar asked. "Negative, sir. The vessel maintains complete silence across all frequencies. It simply sits there as if waiting. Waiting for what?" "Unknown, Admiral." Vextar stood from his throne, his massive frame casting shadows across the bridge. In his experience, unknown ships in Alliance space meant one of 2 things: either refugees fleeing some disaster, or scouts from a species foolish enough to consider challenging Alliance authority. Either way, the response was always the same. "Signal the fleet," he commanded. "Form standard intimidation formation. I want that ship to understand exactly what it is facing." The 12 Alliance dreadnoughts moved with predatory grace, their engines creating brief stars in the darkness as they adjusted course. Within minutes, they had arranged themselves in a perfect sphere around the unknown vessel, weapons trained, inward like the spines of some massive sea urchin. It was a formation designed to inspire terror and immediate surrender. From his command throne, Vextar studied the mystery ship on his main screen. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The hull appeared to be constructed from some kind of dark material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ship's lines were clean and purposeful, with none of the decorative elements that most species use to display their power and status. It looked functional, efficient, and somehow dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with visible weapons. Still, "No response to our hails, Admiral," reported the communications officer, a nervous member of the Veltar species whose homeworld had been conquered. 50 years earlier, Vextar was not surprised. Fear often rendered lesser species temporarily mute when they first encountered Alliance might. He would give them a few moments to recover from their shock, then make his intentions clear. "Open a channel," he ordered. "All frequencies, maximum power." The communications array of the Blood Talon was powerful enough to reach across entire star systems. When it focused on a single target at close range, the signal was impossible to ignore. "Unknown vessel," Vextar's voice boomed across space. "You have entered territory claimed by the Crimson Alliance. You are surrounded by 12 Dreadnought-class warships, each capable of reducing your ship to cosmic dust. Identify yourself immediately and state your business in our space, or you will be destroyed." The response came immediately, but it was not what anyone on the bridge expected. "Admiral Vextar of the Crimson Alliance." The voice was calm, measured, and spoke perfect Alliance standard, despite the fact that this language was supposedly unknown outside their territory. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran vessel Prometheus. You are currently in violation of the Terra-Kepler Accords, Section 7, Subsection 12, which establishes this system as a protected zone under human authority." The bridge fell completely. Silent, Vextar felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. Terran was an old word, one he had not heard in over 2 centuries. It was the ancient name for the species the Alliance had systematically exterminated during the Great Purge. "That is impossible," Commander Zalthek whispered. "The humans are extinct. We personally oversaw their destruction." The human voice continued, unperturbed by their shock. "You are ordered to withdraw your vessels from this system immediately. Any attempt to establish permanent presence or exploit system. Resources will be met with appropriate response." Vextar found his voice, though it came out as more of a snarl. "Human, if that is what you claim to be, you are speaking to ghosts. Your species died 200 years ago. We burned your worlds. We scattered your fleets. We made sure that not even your memory would survive to trouble the galaxy." "Admiral," came the patient reply, "you destroyed our colonies. You eliminated our outer settlements. You succeeded in driving us from explored space. But you made a fundamental error in your assumptions about human nature." "And what error was that?" "You assumed that when faced with extinction, we would simply die quietly. Instead, we learned to hide. We learned to adapt. We learned to survive in places your senses could never find. And most importantly, we learned to grow stronger." The tactical officer, a young Alliance officer with fresh scales, looked up from his console with confusion clear in his expression. "Admiral, our sensors. are detecting massive power buildups throughout the human vessel. Energy levels are off the scale, but the source appears to be completely shielded. Vexter studied the human ship more carefully. Now that he knew what to look for, he could see subtle details that had escaped his notice before. The hull was not merely dark, it seemed to bend light around it in impossible ways. The ship's proportions looked wrong somehow, as if it existed in slightly different dimensions than normal space. "What kind of power source are you using?" he demanded. "That information is classified, Admiral. What you need to understand is that the humans you remember no longer exist. We have evolved beyond your understanding. The species you tried to exterminate has become something far more dangerous than you can imagine." Commander Zoltek moved closer to his admiral. "Sir, this could be some kind of elaborate deception. Perhaps survivors using advanced hologram technology to make their ship appear more formidable than it actually is." But Vextar was not convinced. Something about the human's tone suggested confidence backed by genuine power. In 2 centuries of conquest, he had learned to distinguish between bluff and legitimate threat. This felt like the latter. "Human," he said slowly, "even if some of your species did survive, even if you have advanced beyond our knowledge, you face 12 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy. Your single vessel, regardless of its capabilities, cannot hope to match our combined firepower." The response came with what might have been amusement. "Admiral, you are still thinking in terms of conventional warfare. You assume that victory goes to whoever has the most guns, the thickest armor, the largest fleet. This is why your species has remained primitive despite conquering so many worlds." "Primitive." Vextar's voice rose to a roar. "We have conquered 17 star systems. We command fleets that span the galaxy. We have crushed every species that dared oppose us." "Yes," the human agreed, "you have become very efficient at destroying things. But destruction requires no creativity, no innovation, no growth. While you spent 2 centuries perfecting the art of conquest, we spent that same time learning to transcend the limitations that bind lesser species." The science officer suddenly spoke up, his voice tight with concern. "Admiral, our sensors are detecting spatial distortions around the human vessel. The readings are unlike anything in our databases." Vextar looked at the tactical display. The unknown ship sat calmly in the center of their formation, apparently unbothered by the massive weapons trained upon it. But now he could see subtle changes in the space around it. Ripples and distortions that suggested technology operating on principles his science teams could not understand. "Final warning, human," he growled. "Surrender now, or we will demonstrate why the Crimson Alliance has never been defeated." "Admiral Vextar," came the calm reply. "You have 10 seconds to begin withdrawing your fleet from this system. After that, we will be forced to take action to remove you." The bridge erupted in harsh laughter from the Alliance officers. The idea that a single ship, regardless of its technology, could threaten 12 dreadnoughts was beyond ridiculous. But Vextar noticed that none of the conquered species were laughing. Their expressions ranged from confusion to something that might have been hope. 10 seconds. Vextar stood to his full height, his crimson scales reflecting the angry red lighting of battle stations. "Human, in 10 seconds, your ship will be nothing but expanding plasma, and your pathetic species will finally be completely extinct." 5 seconds, Admiral. Vextar raised his hand, ready to give the order that would unleash enough destructive power to vaporize a small moon. Around him, weapons officers prepared to fire. Targeting systems locked on. Power levels reached maximum. "Capacity, Admiral," The human voice said with infinite patience, "Your time is up." That was when the impossible happened. The human ship simply vanished. When Titans fall, the Prometheus did not disappear in any conventional sense. One moment, it occupied the center of the Crimson Alliance formation, surrounded by 12 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy. The next moment, it simply was not there. No energy signature, no spatial distortion, no trace that it had ever existed at all. Admiral Vextar stared at the empty space on his main screen, his golden eyes wide with disbelief. Around him, the bridge crew worked frantically at their stations, trying to understand what had just happened. "Sensor, report," he demanded. The tactical officer's voice was tight with confusion. "Sir, the human vessel has completely vanished from all sensors. No energy readings, no mass displacement, no quantum signatures. It is as if it never existed." "That is impossible," Commander Zoltek growled. "Ships do not simply cease to exist. It must be some form of advanced cloaking technology." "Sir," the science officer interrupted, "our gravitational sensors detected a massive spatial fold just before the ship disappeared. Whatever they did, it involved manipulating space-time itself." Before Vextar could respond, the human voice filled the bridge again, coming from speakers that should not have been able to receive any signal. "Admiral, you seem confused. Perhaps a demonstration of our capabilities will help clarify the situation." "Where are you?" Vextar snarled into the communications array. "Show yourself, coward." The response came with what was unmistakably amusement. "We are exactly where we need to be, Admiral. The question is whether you are prepared for what happens next." Suddenly, the Prometheus materialized directly above the Alliance flagship, so close that Vextar could see individual hull plates through the bridge's transparent dome. The human ship hung there like a predator studying its prey, its dark hull seeming to absorb the light from the Blood Talon's engines. "Impossible," Zoltek shouted. "All ships, target the human vessel. Fire at will." 12 dreadnoughts opened. Fire simultaneously, particle beams that could slice through asteroids, plasma cannons hot enough to melt steel, and quantum torpedoes capable of disrupting molecular bonds all converged on the small human ship. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small fleet or sterilize the surface of a planet. The weapons struck the Prometheus and simply disappeared. Not absorbed, not deflected, but erased from existence as if they had never been fired. The human ship remained exactly where it was, completely unharmed and apparently unbothered by the assault. "Interesting weapons," Captain Sarah Chen's voice commented, "primitive but energetic. Our turn." The human ship moved, but not in any way that made sense to the Alliance crews watching. It did not accelerate or change course gradually. Instead, it flickered out of existence above the Blood Talon and reappeared beside the Alliance cruiser Crimson Fang. Then it was gone again, materializing near the destroyer Bloodstrike on the opposite side of the formation. "It is the science officer whispered. "They have mastered instantaneous travel across space. All ships, maintain firing solutions," Vextar ordered, but his weapons officers were finding it impossible to target something that could appear anywhere in the blink of an eye. The Prometheus settled into position beside the heavy cruiser Talon's Edge, a 2-kilometer-long warship that had single-handedly conquered 3 star systems. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Alliance ship began to change. The hull of the Talon's Edge started to ripple like water. Metal flowed and shifted as if the very atoms that composed the ship were being rearranged at will. In seconds, the massive warship simply folded. in on itself and vanished, leaving behind only empty space and the confused voices of its crew transmitted over emergency frequencies. "What happened to our ship?" came the panicked voice of Captain Murdoch from the vanished cruiser. "You have been temporarily removed from normal space-time," Captain Chen's voice explained calmly. "Your vessel and crew are unharmed, but you now exist in a pocket dimension until we decide what to do with you." Admiral Vextar felt his blood turn to ice. The humans had not destroyed the Talon's edge. They had simply made it cease to exist in their reality. The implications were staggering. "This is impossible," he said, but even as he spoke the words, he knew they were meaningless. He was watching the impossible happen right in front of his eyes. The Prometheus moved again, this time appearing near. The dreadnought Crimson Victory. The pattern repeated. Reality seemed to bend around the human ship, and another Alliance vessel simply folded out of existence. Then another, and another dot in less than 60 seconds. Half of Vextar's fleet had been removed from normal space-time with the casual ease of someone cleaning up unwanted clutter. The remaining 6 ships found themselves facing an enemy that operated on principles their science could not even begin to understand. "Admiral," Commander Zolthek said quietly, "we should withdraw. This enemy is beyond our capabilities." But Vextar's pride would not allow retreat. He was Admiral Vextar of the Crimson Alliance, heir to a legacy of conquest that stretched back centuries. He had never surrendered to any enemy, and he would not start now. "All remaining ships," he commanded, "focus fire on the human vessel. Concentrate everything we have on a single point. Even their advanced technology must have limits." The 6 surviving Alliance dreadnoughts unleashed their entire arsenals in a coordinated barrage that lit up space like a newborn star. Weapons that drew power from entire fusion reactors fired simultaneously, creating an energy concentration that warped space-time around the target zone. When the light faded, the Prometheus remained exactly where it had been. Not a single scorch mark marred its dark hull. "Admiral," Captain Chen's voice carried a note of what might have been disappointment. "You seem determined to learn this lesson the hard way." The human ship began to change. Its hull started to unfold like some impossible origami creation, revealing structures and systems that hurt to look at directly. Energy patterns flowed across its surface in configurations that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. "What is it doing?" Zolthek whispered. The answer became clear a moment later. The Prometheus was not revealing weapons in any conventional sense. Instead, it was exposing technology that operated on the fundamental forces of reality itself. Space began to bend around the human ship, creating gravitational fields that pulled at the Alliance vessels like invisible hands. The dreadnought, Bloodstorm, was the first to succumb. Despite its massive engines running at full power, the ship was slowly drawn toward the Prometheus. But as it got closer, something extraordinary happened. The Alliance vessel began to break apart, not through any external force, but because its very molecular structure was being rewritten. "They are manipulating matter at the quantum level," the science officer reported, his voice filled with awe and terror. "They are literally rebuilding our ships from the atomic level up." Indeed, the Bloodstorm was being transformed before their eyes. Its weapons systems were being converted into something else entirely. Its armor plating flowed like liquid and reformed into new configurations. In minutes, the Alliance dreadnought had been completely rebuilt into something that looked more like a work of art than a warship. "Your vessel has been upgraded," Captain Chen announced. Its new systems are far more efficient than the primitive technology you were using before. The crew is unharmed and will find their ship significantly improved. Admiral Vextar could only stare in shock as the same process was repeated with another of his ships, and then another. The humans were not destroying the Alliance fleet. They were improving it, demonstrating technology so advanced that it might as well have been magic. Why, he finally managed to ask, why are you not simply destroying us? Because, Admiral, destruction serves no purpose. Your species conquered and enslaved because you saw the universe in terms of winners and losers, predators and prey. We see it differently. The remaining Alliance ships found themselves caught in the same gravitational fields, drawn inexorably toward the human vessel. But instead of fear, Vexter began to feel something else, a growing understanding of just how completely he had misunderstood the situation. 200 years ago, Captain Chen continued, your people drove us from our homes, scattered our fleets, and forced us to the very edge of extinction. You thought you were eliminating a threat, but what you actually did was force us to evolve. The Blood Talon was now close enough to the Prometheus that Vextar could see details of the human ship's hull. What he had taken for simple, dark metal was actually something far more complex, a material that seemed to exist, partially in normal space and partially in dimensions he could not perceive. We learned to survive in the spaces between spaces, the human captain explained. We discovered that the universe has layers of reality that your science has never even imagined. We transcended the limitations that bind conventional matter and energy. But why spare us? Vexter asked. We are your enemies. We destroyed your civilization. Admiral, you destroyed our old civilization. What emerged from that destruction is something far greater. We do not seek revenge, because revenge is a primitive concept. We seek to prevent others from making the same mistakes we once made. The transformation of the Blood Talon began. Vexter felt the ship around him changing, its systems becoming more efficient, its structure more elegant. The harsh lighting of the bridge was replaced by a soft, natural glow. The air itself seemed cleaner, more vital. Your fleet will be returned to Alliance space, Captain Chen announced. But these ships now carry a message. Your people will see what human technology can accomplish. They will understand that the age of conquest through force is ending, and if we choose to attack human space again, Vextar asked, then you will discover that what you have seen today is merely the smallest demonstration of our capabilities. We have transcended physical limitations, Admiral. We exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. We can reshape matter and energy with a thought. We have become something your ancestors might have called gods. As the transformation of his fleet completed, Admiral Vextar found himself standing on a bridge that was both familiar and utterly changed. Every system had been improved beyond recognition. The weapons that had once been designed only for destruction now served multiple purposes. The engines that had once consumed vast amounts of fuel now drew power from the quantum vacuum itself. This is your final warning to the Crimson Alliance, Captain Chen said. The galaxy is vast enough for all species to thrive without conquest and slavery. Pursue peace, and humanity will be your ally. Continue on your current path, and you will face consequences beyond your imagination. The Prometheus began to fade from visibility, not disappearing, but somehow becoming less present. In normal space-time. Remember, Admiral, the human captain's voice came one final time. You have seen what 200 years of human evolution can accomplish. We are no longer the species you tried to exterminate. We have become something immeasurably more. The human ship vanished completely, leaving the transformed Alliance fleet alone in space. Around him, Vextar's officers stared at consoles and systems they barely recognized, all functioning with impossible efficiency. The Admiral looked out at the stars and realized that everything had changed. The galaxy that the Crimson Alliance had dominated for centuries was no longer theirs to control. Humanity had returned, not as the weak species they had once conquered, but as something that transcended every limitation the universe had once imposed. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Vextar understood what it meant to be truly outmatched. The humans had not simply won a battle. They had demonstrated that the rules of reality itself were subject to their will. As his transformed fleet began the long journey back to Alliance space, Vextar knew that his report would change everything. The age of conquest was ending, and the age of human transcendence had begun.